Grace and peace, everybody. Welcome to Change Bible Study. This is a singular thought, a single verse that I pray speaks to our hearts. It's in Romans chapter 2. It's one of those verses, you know how sometimes you'll be reading in the Bible and you'll read into one meaning of the verse, which is fine and good, but because the word is so dynamic and there's so many layers of flavor, so many layers of truth, you'll read one thing and miss another. I was reading this verse and I've read it before, but that underlying layer of truth is what spoke to me and not the one that was necessarily on top. Romans chapter 2 verse 13 is one of those verses, and it's short, but many layers. For not the hearers of the law are just before God, but the doers of the law shall be justified. Now, when I normally read that verse, I kind of lean over or lean into the latter part where it says that those that do the law will be justified. Now, remember, this was all in the context of Romans 2, which is trying to paint a picture of our hopelessness apart from the gospel of God, which is the gift of Jesus Christ. And basically saying that, hey, in order to be justified according to the law, you have to perfectly keep the law. So obviously, it's trying to juxtapose salvation by what we do as opposed to salvation believing in what Jesus has done. But then there is this early part, or the first part of the verse, that's also very true. And it simply says, for not the hearers of the law are just before God. Now, regardless of what lane you fall on, whether you believe you're saved by what you do, or I'm saved by what Jesus has done, the truth is, even if you just hearing the law, that's not enough. Now let that settle for a moment and ask ourselves the question, how much time do we invest in putting ourselves in a position to hear God's word? That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. Putting ourselves in that position, whether it's through Bible study, whether it's through going to church, whether it's through listening and watching videos like this, whatever the case might be, exposing ourselves to a knowledge of God, exposing ourselves to what he has said. That's the flow that we need to be in. But what this verse is telling us is that it does not complete the circuit. It is a necessary step in the process of faith, but it is not the sum total of faith. It is not the end of faith. So sitting in a seminar or watching a video or even reading ad nauseum for ourselves is not enough if that's all we do. What God is intending is that we discover all the truth that we can in order to live all of the truth that we can. We are learning in order to live. We are trying to understand in order to even experience what he has said. And so what that will do, if we start with the end in mind, it will govern how we read. It'll govern what we watch, because we know, look, I'm not just flipping through a cookbook, right, of recipes, but there's a difference where dinner time is at 6 and it's 4:30 and I'm trying to find something to make. I flip through the book differently because now I'm actually trying to find a recipe to create a dish, to get something to eat. If we read the Bible and if we approach study with the idea that I am going to use this, I'm not just going to view this, I think we'll find the Spirit of God opening us up in a way that becomes a lot more real. And we'll see our spiritual musculature develop in a way that it's like, wow, I'm not necessarily reading more, but I'm actually doing what I read. We'll find ourselves actually starting to practice what we have preached. And when we do that, guess who else benefits? The people that we do that for, to go back to the recipe scenario, the people that we are cooking for, they'll see a difference. They'll see like, wow, we've got 2 or 3 entrees before we just had one and an appetizer. Because now the focus is not on how much I know, but on how much can I share? How much can I give? Because the hearers of the law are not the ones who will be justified. It's those who hear and do what they have come to know as truth. As we're talking about truth and the idea of studying it in order to experience it, remember, that's not what's saving us. But this is the summation. This is the result of genuine salvation. It is a faith that works by love. And so if I'm trying to study in order to So if you want to see your study take a turn, if you want to see your experience in the Word become alive, where it's not just how many verses I know, but I actually become a living example, a living vessel of that verse, let's challenge ourselves to actually practice what the Word is preaching to us.